I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Hey, you guys, and welcome back to the News du Jour. So real quick, I have an ask for you guys. Will you send me on Instagram, or you can send it to my email address? Both are linked in our show notes below. Will you send me a video of you listening to the News du Jour and what you're doing while you're listening, whether it's, you're in the car on the way to work, or you're doing your hair before work, or, your kids are running around while you're doing the dishes, or you're on the elliptical at the gym. I want to know where and when you guys are listening, and I think it would be so fun to stitch together a bunch of videos of different listeners all over the country or all over the world who are listening to our podcast. So that is an ask, and if I get enough of them, of course, I will stitch them together and make a Reels/TikTok for you guys. I just think it'd be a fun community building thing, because I've heard from you guys over the years that you listen in very, very different ways, which, speaking of, it's not officially 2 years yet, but we're coming up on our 2-year anniversary. And last year we had this phenomenal happy hour to celebrate our 1-year anniversary. And it just was so fun, and it was so great to meet people in person who I hadn't met before and give you guys a hug. And although this year I think I will be 9 months pregnant, so I probably will not be throwing something like that, I definitely am looking forward to doing something to celebrate, and I'm going to be thinking about that and thinking what we could do. So stay tuned on that front as well. So before we launch into news about Ukraine for the day, I wanted to let you guys know that the public death toll of COVID-19 has officially surpassed 6 million yesterday. Although it's important to note that the true count will probably never be known, as reporting in certain areas is just not the best, reliable testing isn't available everywhere, and there just is a stigma when it comes to battling this disease. So, needless to say, this health crisis will define our lifetimes and shape our response to health crises into the future. So without further ado, we will jump into news from Ukraine, but we do have 2 mini stories towards the end of the episode for you on other topics today. So first up, in one city, I'm probably going to butcher this, but it looks like Mykolaiv, Ukraine, is managing to fight off the Russians for now. One colonel from the Ukrainian army described the conditions, saying, quote, "Few expected such strength from our people, because when you haven't slept for 3 days and when you only have one dry ration because the rest are burned up, when it's negative temperatures outside and there's nothing to warm you, and when you constantly are in the fight, believe me, it's physically very difficult. But our people have endured this." End quote. So far, they have been able to push the Russians backward in this one area, but it's important to keep in mind that they are up against fire from both the ground and the air, and they may not be able to hold them off forever. We'll definitely keep you guys posted. So, Mariupol, the town we talked about yesterday, is completely cut off now from heat, water, and electricity. So those still residing in the city of Mariupol have attested that it is almost unlivable by modern standards. There's no internet, no electricity, no water, no heat in the winter. Woof. This is the same city that we talked about yesterday where we discussed Russia arranging a ceasefire and then going back on their word. People are reportedly drinking out of puddles in the street there. The city has not yet been able to take account of the dead, but the entire left bank of the city has now been completely blown out. The mayor has said that going outside right now in this city is a death sentence. So everyone is staying indoors as long as they can. But some people are getting so cold and so thirsty that they're having to venture out. Meanwhile, over in Russia, police have now arrested 3,000 war protesters in Russia. That's almost doubled since the last time that we reported on it. And to be honest, I fear that it could be a lot more people, given that the information coming out of Russia just isn't super reliable right now, and this would not be a statistic that they are proud of. They're just so cut off. Police there are calling these protesters fascists and attempting to arrest everyone at anti-war demonstrations. It's important to remember that in Russia, there is no right to assembly unless it's been approved by the government. And the government is never going to approve an anti-government demonstration. Prison sentences for these types of peaceful protesters can be up to 15 years. The people of Russia protesting and being arrested are very brave. But as of now, the protests don't seem to be doing much good. So next up in news about Ukraine, Russia specifically targeted a bridge that civilians were using to flee. So Russian forces actually targeted this one particular bridge in Ukraine that they specifically knew Ukrainian civilians were using to flee the war zone. In the process, they took out a whole family. This, to me, is one of the most despicable things that I've heard, because there's just no chance that Ukrainian military members were there. They simply did this to entrap people and potentially take out civilians. As the shells rang out, a mother, her teenage son, 8-year-old daughter, and family friend who was helping them flee were all dead. As Ukrainian military men rushed over to survey the scene and see what had happened, they could hear a pet carrier with a small dog in it barking. Absolutely heartbreaking, you guys. And there have been tons of stories about pets. Honestly, I have not included most of them because they're just, so hard to even talk about or think about. If you're a pet person, if you're an animal person, they're really heart-wrenching stories, and that's all I need to say about it. That is just one of the many, many side effects and consequences of war. And last up, in news relating to the war in Ukraine, average gas prices have now risen above $4 a gallon here in the U.S. Y'all, the global energy market has been so disrupted by the war in Ukraine that 12 days in, we're already feeling the effects on the other side of the world. All the various sanctions and companies not willing to work with Russia have definitely put a strain on costs, and we are likely nowhere near the peak. And next up for today, we are discussing the Iowa tornadoes. So just as a mini story before we go for the day, at least 3 tornadoes rampaged Iowa, and at least 7 people have been left dead, including 2 children. Tornadoes are just not common in the month of March, at least not in this area of the country. Winds got up to 135 miles per hour during the storm. The damage is still being taken in, but in just one county in Iowa, 52 families have lost their homes, and their belongings are strewn throughout the area. The whole heartland should be bracing itself for a tough storm season based on what we've seen this year. Listen to warnings from officials, prepare your storm shelter, and stay safe, everyone. So before we go for the day, another little fascinating tidbit for you guys, politically speaking, is that it seems Vice President Mike Pence is looking to stage a comeback for his own political career separately from that of President Trump. His group, called Advancing American Freedom, just bought $10 million worth of political ads used to take aim at President Biden's handling of the crisis in Ukraine, as well as rising gas prices. $10 million is not pocket change, you guys. It will be fascinating to see where he might be headed in all this. Stay tuned. And that is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote: "This world may bring deep darkness, but we are the bearers of light. We'll join our flames together and shine through the blackest of nights." If you enjoyed this episode, please consider becoming a patron of our podcast. For $7.99 a month, you can unlock tons of perks like breaking news text messages so that you're never out of the loop. Tons of bonus episodes are already up there ready for you to binge, and a discussion board full of networking opportunities and much more. Go to www.patreon.com/sugarfree media today to become a patron. This is the best way to support our show. Our patrons make News du Jour possible. But a couple other ways to support our podcast are: rate and review on whatever podcast platform you use to listen, share on your social media, you have influence, tell your friends, family, and colleagues that you love News du Jour and why you listen. You can also follow us on social media under sugarfreemedia.co on Instagram, just sugarfreemedia, all one word, on TikTok, and sugarfree_media on Twitter. We also have a weekend newsletter called Dreamers Digest that's full of dreamy content recommendations for your weekend, and a life update from yours truly. Sign up today on our website, www.sugarfreemedia.co. Our music is by Joey Lavoie and Nicholas Foster. Our cover art is by Hannah Pierce Photography. Our Sugar Free Media logo is by Catherine Jezik Designs. Any twinkling or little footsteps you might hear in the background are by my dog, Rhett. He's a rescue pup and always records with me. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour.
Broadcasting from Oklahoma.